So, have you ever stopped and wondered how we, as a species, try to solve problems that are literally planet sized? I mean, things like the hole in the ozone layer or our warming climate. These crises don't care about our maps or our borders. Well, today, we're going to dig into the clever, complex, and yet sometimes frustrating systems that we've built to tackle them. We're pulling back the curtain on the invisible rulebooks that humanity has written in a quest to govern our own planet.
And really, this is the fundamental question, isn't it? Think about it. Acid rain, collapsing fish stocks, deforestation. Pollution doesn't stop for a passport check. So if a single country can't fix it on its own, how in the world do you get everyone to work together? This exact challenge forced us to invent a whole new kind of international playbook, one for problems that just refuse to stay in their lane.
This quote just nails it. Over the 20th century, it became painfully obvious that what we do in one spot could have devastating effects thousands of miles away. All of a sudden, the world realized we needed a new set of rules for protecting our shared home.
So that need for a new rulebook takes us right here, to the birth of a really powerful idea back in the 1970s. You see, as people became more aware of these border crossing problems, scholars and diplomats were scratching their heads trying to solve this massive puzzle. The big question became, how do you get sovereign nations to cooperate when there's no global boss to tell them what to do?
And this is what they came up with: the international regime. I know, it sounds super academic, but the concept is actually pretty simple. Just think of it like the agreed upon rules of the road for a specific global issue. It's the shared understanding of what's cool, what's not, and how we're all going to make decisions together. Let's break that down, because it's really built on three core pillars. First, you've got principles. This is just getting everyone to agree on the basic facts of the problem, that it's real and we know what's causing it. Second, you establish norms. These are the standards for what good behavior looks like for a country. And third, you create the rules and procedures, the actual written down instructions for how everyone is supposed to act. Okay, now this is absolutely crucial to get. A regime is not the same thing as a formal organization. The United Nations, for example, has a headquarters in New York, it's got staff, a budget, but a regime, like the one for protecting the ozone layer, is more of a shared idea, what experts call a social construct. It's this powerful, unspoken agreement that guides how countries behave, even if there's no physical building or a flag out front. Early on, the big debate was why these regimes even form in the first place. Was it because one superpower, a hegemon, basically forced everyone to play along? Or was it just cold, hard self-interest? Every country doing a simple cost-benefit analysis? Maybe they just bubble up naturally when a problem gets bad enough. Or maybe it happens when all the scientists start saying the same thing. The truth is, there was no single, easy answer. And that brings us to the 1990s, when the whole conversation took a sharp and really important turn. After decades of just defining what regimes are, researchers started asking a much bigger question. Do they actually make a difference out here in the real world? To answer that, everyone looked at this classic comparison. On one hand, you have the ozone regime, built around the Montreal Protocol, which is pretty much hailed as a massive success story. And on the other hand, you've got the climate regime, which has been this constant, grinding struggle. So what was the secret sauce for the ozone treaty, and why has it been so dang hard to replicate for climate? By comparing cases like these, researchers started to piece together a recipe for success. Turns out the ozone regime had all the key ingredients. The science was crystal clear, the rules were easy to follow and enforce, there was money on the table to help poorer nations adapt, and you had strong political leaders pushing it forward. The climate problem, well, being vastly more complex, has struggled on pretty much every single one of those points. So the whole field had this major aha moment. They realized it wasn't enough to just describe these systems in theory. No, they had to get their hands dirty and figure out what actually works in the messy real world. The goal was to learn from the wins and, design better, smarter agreements in the future. This hunger for real evidence kicked off the next major phase in the 2000s, the age of big data. Instead of just comparing 2 or 3 case studies, researchers started building these huge databases to analyze hundreds of environmental agreements at once, hunting for the hidden patterns of what works and what doesn't. Projects with these big academic-sounding names like IDECG and the International Regimes Database, they were absolute game changers. For the first time ever, scholars could run large-scale analyses, which pushed the entire field into this new era of serious rigor.
They could finally start making solid claims about what works, all backed up by a mountain of evidence.
And all this data revealed something fascinating and kind of chaotic. These regimes don't exist in a bubble. They actually bump into each other, they overlap, and sometimes they flat out conflict. This is called regime interplay. Think of it like city planning. You can't just build a new highway without thinking about how it messes with local streets, public transit, and where people live. Everything is connected. And this interconnectedness happens in a few different ways. Some regimes are embedded. They're nested inside bigger ones. Others are clustered around similar issues, like a whole family of treaties all trying to protect the oceans. And sometimes they just plain overlap, covering the same ground with different and occasionally conflicting rules. It's a complex, tangled web, not some neat and tidy org chart.
And here's a perfect example of the real-world consequences. A rule from the World Trade Organization designed to promote free trade might unintentionally block a country from, say, taxing carbon-intensive goods that directly undermines the goals of a climate agreement. Managing these kinds of conflicts is a huge, huge challenge. So this brings us right up to the present day, where the very idea of how we cooperate is evolving once again. The world is just way more complex now, with a lot more actors on the stage than ever before. I mean, this whole journey has been a real evolution of an idea. It started in the 70s with a simple question: what is this thing? Then the 90s brought a dose of skepticism. Okay, but does it actually work? The 2000s were all about the data. Let's measure everything and find out for real. And that brings us to today, where the conversation has gotten much bigger than just countries. It's expanded to this messy, complicated world of global governance. Because let's face it, it's not just about countries anymore. You've got cities forming their own climate networks. You've got huge corporations creating sustainability standards. And you've got NGOs on the ground monitoring everything and shaping policy. This new landscape, with all these different players, is the new reality of environmental problem solving. But let's be realistic here. This stuff is incredibly hard, and some major roadblocks are still standing in the way. Countries are, and probably always will be, fiercely protective of their sovereignty. The whole system of institutions can feel fragmented and super slow. There are these deep inequalities between the global north and south that create constant tension over who should pay for everything. And ultimately, without strong enforcement and public buy-in, even the best designed agreement is just words on paper.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? These international agreements are humanity's best tool, maybe our only tool for tackling these planetary crises. We've seen how they've grown from a simple idea into a complex, data-driven system over 50 years. But in the face of escalating environmental threats, the clock is ticking loudly. Can these rulebooks of ours evolve fast enough to keep up? Well, that's the challenge that's going to define our time.